Hi everyone, welcome back. I'm Michael Sandler, your host on Inspire Nation. If you've ever wanted a complete breakthrough in your life, then do we have the show for you. Today I'll be talking with Dr. John Demartini, human behavior specialist, the best-selling author of over 40 books, a featured guest on The Secret, and the creator of a fascinating program called The Breakthrough Experience. And that's just what I want to talk with him about today, about how to get unstuck, get on track, and have a complete and total breakthrough in your life. That, plus we'll talk about Gottfried Wilhelm Leibniz, Paul Dirac, Ludwig Boltzmann, positive and negative particles and antiparticles, and what in the world philias and phobias have to do with anything. So welcome back to the show, John. Are you ready to shine?
I'm ready to shine. Thank you for having me again.
Thank you so much for being here in a mighty woohoo. Before we dive right into things, actually, I've got to figure out how we're going to sew the rooster in because we were talking so much about Ruru. But what would you say was the biggest breakthrough in your life?
Well, the biggest breakthrough in my life occurred when I was 17, when I met Paul Bragg. And I had listened to him speak one night. And after hearing him speak, I saw life differently. And I thought maybe, just somehow, maybe, I could overcome my learning problems and become intelligent someday. Because I did not have, I was a high school dropout, and I didn't read until I was 18.
See, what's fascinating, I'm way jumping ahead. All I can think of is now magnets and negatives and positives. And the fact that you were saying or told or taught how unintelligent you were, of course, we got to go to the other pole on the same magnet, don't we?
Yes, exactly. I think that void that I had as a child, because I had a speech impediment when I was 1.5 years old, I had to go to a speech pathologist.
Yep.
I wasn't pronouncing and using my mouth properly. Had to wear buttons and strings in my mouth and all kind of stuff to kind of use muscles. I had a speech impediment, learning problem, reading problem. Mm-hmm. I was born with my arm and leg turned in, so I had a walking problem. I had a lot of those challenges. Every one of those things that I had the challenge with became sort of a catalyst for me to do like you said, the opposite. Now I've read voluminously, I've spoken voluminously, traveled voluminously. All the things that I was told I would never be able to do, it turned out to be the things that I love doing.
When I was 10 years old, I was racing bicycles against the babysitter's cousin. She hit a rock, hit me, flew through the air, all sorts of broken bones and stuff. They showed me on x-ray 6 surgeries later, you've got arthritis, you'll be lucky to walk by you're 18. Of course, I went on to become a professional athlete. Those poles can actually be very important. And when we're talking about breakthrough, we can actually use that energy, can't we?
Absolutely. Anything you're not saying thank you for is your baggage. Anything you can say thank you for is fuel. And what's interesting is those voids. I found that when I was in the health field. Yeah. I watched that some of the greatest doctors are the ones that had in their family, either in their own life or in their family life, health issues. I had a mom that had Lou Gehrig's condition. I had a father that had Parkinson's condition, and I specialized in neurology. That was my focus, neurological conditions. So those voids often become our values, and the things that we think are missing becomes most important. So yeah, that has a lot to do with it. Some of the greatest athletes and some of the greatest health professionals and some of the even celebrities who wanted to be big were small.
This makes me think, first off, of not so real movies where the two characters who are attracted are complete opposites and fighting each other. But it also makes me think of the very thing that we're resisting against. No, I couldn't possibly do that. Don't make me do that. Anywhere but there is exactly what we may need to give gratitude for and step into, isn't it?
Exactly. And whatever we swear to ourselves, I would never do that. That's our destiny.
That's very important to understand. So what did Paul Bragg say to you or say to everyone that lit the fire of hope?
He was just an inspired guy. I mean, he helped initiate 1,000 health food stores across America. Mm-hmm. And he was on a mission of a health crusade to try to increase the quality of health in America. Yeah. And it was without a doubt his life's mission and his daughter's mission, still to this day. And but his enthusiasm and his inspiration for what he was doing didn't matter what you wanted to do, whatever it was, he had a way of contagion contagious enthusiasm about what he was doing that made you think I could do it. And he basically said a number of things. He said, number one, that what you think about, what you visualize, what you say to yourself, and how you feel about yourself, and what actions you take is going to determine what you go in life. And I thought about that. And I go, whoa, that's something I hadn't been taught before.
Yeah.
And it was common sense, but it was just not commonly shared. And I thought, I can control those. I can control what I say. I can control what I think. I control what I say to myself and visualize. Could I change my life? And he said that you want to set goals for yourself, your family, your community, your city, your state, your nation, and your world for 100 to 120 years, because by the time you're that old, people will be living to 100.
Yeah.
And by God, our ages have gone up, and it's getting closer towards that mark. So, and he basically also said that you have a body, mind, and soul, and the body must be directed by the mind, and mind must be guided by the most inspired part of yourself, the soul, if you will, the authentic self. Yeah. To maximize your potential. So these are just some of the things that kind of stuck with me. And I thought to myself, I don't even know how to read. How am I going to do what I saw? And he took us to this guided imagery meditation experience. Mm-hmm. And I saw in that meditation experience a vision of me standing in front of a group of people. And I thought, whoa, where does that come from? And I've been holding that vision, and I made that vision, and it's painted in my office. It's a big, beautiful painting of the vision that I saw that day.
Thank you. I'm going to go back in time a little bit. There's a vision coming to me of you on a surfboard or on a longboard. And I don't know how good of a surfer you were, but if you're on any sort of a real wave, and I'm going to define a real wave as one that's in Hawaii. Those are not kind and gentle waves. I lived there for many years. If you're on a real wave, you must control body, mind, and spirit. You must know where your thoughts are going. You must know what you're visualizing or what you hope is the outcome. All of the pieces that you're describing that he said are in surfing a wave. And that, I don't know if that had a factor, but I have to think somewhere inside of you, you go, Eureka, I've done this.
Yes. Well, I was surfing on the North Shore. I met him at Waimea Bay.
There we go.
Waimea Bay Recreation Center, Sunset Recreation Center there. Right where Pupukea Heights Road come into the beach.
I know where you're talking. I've got goosebumps.
I was living at Iakai Beach Park at the time, surfing Pipeline, Iakai, Pupukea. I mean, all those places.
For people who don't know, you mess up there. You're lucky if you just get totally broken. You may not even.
When I was 16 years old, I was surfing Haleiwa, and I saw Lord Blair and Becky Benson surfing there in those days. And I thought, man, that guy's 65. He's out there cranking. I was so inspired by that. I said, when I'm 65, I'm going to come back here and ride big waves. On my 65th birthday, a year ago, I'm 66 now, I went there to the North Shore, surfed Laniakea, and surfed Pipeline. And if you look on November 25th, 2019, and look up Pipeline, you'll see that those were not small waves. And I got to surf on my 65th birthday and ride Pipeline.
Woohoo!
So, if you say to yourself and see for yourself something and you stay with it, the commitment to something that's deeply meaningful, that's truly inspiring, that you're willing to take baby steps until they become big dreams is very powerful, particularly if it's deeply meaningful. You don't stop on it. You just keep doing it. And I think that's, it doesn't matter what goes on in a world around us. What matters is how we perceive, decide, and act upon that. And what we decide to see how it's helping you get what's really important to you. If we can see things on the way, not in the way, then nothing stops us along the way.
Thank you. So let's go from there. We're going to dive back into perceive, decide, and act. Before that, who was, and I completely butchered his name at the beginning. We're going to go for it again. Gottfried Wilhelm Leibniz. Yes.
Okay. Leibniz or whatever is a German philosopher that also discovered the calculus at the same time that Sir Isaac Newton did. And there was a controversy on who really discovered it, but they actually did it from two different angles. But they were at the same time, they were contemporaries at the time, two great minds. Newton was a deeply religious man, but a scientist. Leibniz was a deeply religious man, but a scientist and philosopher and a theologian. And they both wanted to know the laws of the universe. They wanted to know how, you might say, the divine master plan was structured. Yeah. What is the divine master plan, as they call it? Because they believed in a theological plan at the time. And so he had a major influence. He wrote three books that touched my life. One was Theodicy, One was monadology, and the other one is the discourse on metaphysics. And the discourse on metaphysics was the most significant because he talked about recognizing a higher order in the apparent chaos, a perfection in life that we don't normally see, and how to access that. And those that do, their lives are changed forever. And I got tears in my eyes when I read that when I was 18. And when I started, I had to read almost every other word with a dictionary. But it just touched my heart to such a degree. And I went on a pursuit. How do I help people recognize the magnificent order that's actually in their life after all that they don't see? That's been my mission.
So let's go from there to another one. We've got 3 influential people to cover that have helped you figure out how people can have this breakthrough experience. Paul Dirac, and we're talking positive and negative particles and antiparticles.
Paul Dirac wrote a book in 1947 called The Principles of Quantum Mechanics.
Yeah.
And he introduced to the world an idea that for every particle found in quantum mechanics, there was an antiparticle, the opposite, and they were balanced. And one was occurring with the other. Now, we now know that. We know that in our standard model of quantum mechanics and particle physics. We know that's occurring. Every particle has its antiparticle. But he was the first one to really introduce that. And when I read his book, again with a dictionary, I saw that he took positive and negative particles and merged them together to make light. And in my mind, in my naivety, I wondered, what would happen if I took positive and negative emotions and merged them together? Could I make enlightenment? And that set me on another journey. Between that and trying to find the hidden order in things, that was another piece of the jigsaw puzzle that made me want to go and probe deeper into psychology, philosophy, neurology, etc.
So let's go into neuroscience for just a brief moment. We've got AWE, the automatic writing experience, our book coming out January 29th. I interviewed some neuroscientists about it. Dr. Andrew Newberg is one that did a lot of SPECT scans on people who have had or have been automatic writing practitioners. And one of the things he found interesting, because he's written Enlightenment in the Brain and many other books on how your brain changes with spirituality. And one of the things he talked about is, just like you're saying, the negative and positive coming together. He hypothesizes that a large drop from a high state to a low state, from a quiet state to an active state, or vice versa, these drops or changes in polarity can actually trigger an enlightenment experience.
Yes. The brain is set up in a negative feedback homeostatic manner that anytime we have electronics that are imbalanced or neurochemicals that are imbalanced, it has a homeostatic mechanism to bring it back into balance. Our intuition is attempting to do it. Our chemistry is attempting to do it. And now in Neuron Magazine, March 17, 2016, there was a fantastic article on the idea of anti-memories, that for every memory and the content of a memory is counterbalanced with an anti-memory to make sure that we don't have hyper-excitation in the brain in order to normalize it. It's a fascinating article. It's something that I'd been looking at already, studying Jungian's work and also the work I did on perceptual illusions that I wrote a book when I was 23 on. And we definitely have a brain that is doing what it can to maximize literally biophoton emission and a state of, you could say, authentic state, of peak potential state. The brain is designed to do that. Our job is to simply find out what's really, 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 truly inspiring and meaningful to us, important to us, and live by priority to maximize the expression of that state. But our brain is trying to help us stay there.
And the brain, so this jumps way ahead, because the second half I wanted to talk about fear. When we talk about an animalistic brain, a brain that is fight or flight based, it needs to stay the center line, this center course. That's where the peak efficiency, I would say, occurs. Because if you're staying too much on what you can describe as philias and phobias, and you probably need to share with people what that is, if you vary too much to one side or the other, you're not going to operate efficiently. And so the brain is constantly bringing you back, and you think it's bad, negative thoughts, but it's actually doing its job for your highest good.
When you're infatuated with something, you have what is called the amygdala having the desire center activated in the nucleus accumbens, trying to find a pleasure, associating it with prey, like an animal, to eat and pleasure and consuming it. And whenever you do that, you're conscious of the upsides, unconscious of the downsides. You're not seeing the whole, you're only seeing half of it. You're ignoring half of it. And so the brain throws up intuition, which is anti-content, to try to bring you back into balance, to try to center you again, because you're not at maximum potential when you're off on the side. When you're resentful, you're conscious of the downsides, unconscious of the other. The striatum and pallidum is now activated, and you're only seeing one side again. And now your intuition and your anti-memories come in to try to show you the upside. It's trying to extract meaning. The mean, as the virtues and the vices that Aristotle talked about, the mean is between the two. And to extract meaning out of our existence, our intuition is trying to show us the parts we're ignorant of, to see both sides, to bring it to balance. So our brain is doing everything it can to bring us into meaning, to help us find purpose, to be able to help us do something without being distracted by impulse or instinct, the things that are the two animal behaviors that are polarized, and allow us to be centered and objective and most proficient.
Thank you. And so it seems like it may be, well, I'm looking at how we get stuck, because we're talking today about how to have a breakthrough experience. And it occurs to me that we get stuck when we end up focusing on one side of this and place judgment on it. We create a feedback loop.
Exactly. Anytime we're stuck in the amygdala is what we've called the subconscious mind, storing impulses and instincts from every experience that we saw, the negatives without the positives, or the positives without the negatives, and didn't see the balance. And we end up having heart rate variability go down because we're polarized and we're not balanced, where we have the most resilience. See, if we're infatuated with something, we fear its loss. So the fantasy, or philia, is now balanced by the phobia. And if we're resentful to something, we now fear its gain. And now the fantasy is getting away from it. So every time we have a philia, which is assuming more positives and negatives, we have a phobia, which is assuming more negatives and positives, to balance it in the brain. When we actually see both sides, we're untouched by the world on the outside. We're governed from within. And this is where our most profound state is.
So I want to dive into Ludwig Boltzmann in a second here. Before we do that, I'm seeing you at 18 years of age. You've just learned how to read. You've got out a dictionary. You're going for it. And you're having to look at both sides and going, I'm not an idiot. I can do this. Okay, I couldn't do this in the past, but I can do, and threading the needle right through the middle.
Well, I lived in a dictionary, reading and memorizing 30 words a day to grow my vocabulary. And every time I'd read a book that I didn't understand the word, these books are not easy. These books were one sentence on average was 5 lookup words.
Wow.
When I started, 5, 6, you had to look up almost every word. But gradually my vocabulary grew because I was pushing myself to study even advanced teachers.
So this again jumps ahead. We're going to keep looping things back. This is such a fun discourse here, which is the question of motivation, values, and alignment. Because most people would say, I don't have the motivation to look up 30 words. I don't have the motivation to go through, to put on my waders and to go through a sentence where I have to look up 5 words. How'd you stay motivated?
When you're doing something that's high in your values, you have what is called an intrinsic drive.
Yes.
When you're doing something low on your values, you need extrinsic motivators. An extrinsic motivator is transient at best, and you won't be driven from within. But when you're doing something that's deeply meaningful, it was extremely meaningful to me to discover that I could overcome my learning problems, because I grew up a dunce cap. I had to wear a dunce cap when I was a kid. And I was told so stupid and an idiot. So I had a motive that was deep to make me want to know I can overcome this. So I can't say everybody has that, because some people, they didn't really have a void there. You know, they did okay in school and they're not focused on it. But it meant a lot to me to be able to learn how I could read. To be able to read was like a gift and a dream come true.
John, in first grade, I was sent back to kindergarten. In second grade, I was sent back to first grade to shame me into improving. I was ahead of you on the reading scale. I got reading. I reversed all of my letters and stuff, and they would shame me. They would make me use this giant paper with giant lines, and they would hit my hand with a ruler or shame me if I started switching letters. Yes, so when I sign books today, I still get nervous. Totally. You get
I
it.
still write this way. My hand was turned in when I was a child.
Oh my
And
God.
I wrote, not saw, I put was. I dyslexic, I put it backwards like you did. So I would be the same thing. They get hit with rulers because I would not put my hand this way,
Yeah.
but I wrote this way. And I still, to this day, still hold the pen, strange, but it doesn't matter. I turned it into an opportunity. Because I had dyslexia, I decided to turn every word that I made up that slipped out of my mouth that wasn't accurately pronounced. And I kept records of it, and I made a Dyslexionary, Dr. Demartini's Dyslexionary. I figured I'll sell that now.
Oh, I've got to check that out. That's perfect. And I'm just thinking of it. It's fascinating how the mind works, because if they would tell me, pay attention, slow down, focus more, it's just going to get more jibber jabbered to the hill.
Exactly. Yeah, I would do the hyperactive things. The first affirmation that a lady gave me was my fourth grade teacher, Mrs. Good.
Yeah.
And she said, Dr. Demartini, John Demartini, J. Demartini, they called me, said, wasn't doctor. They said, you're going to stay after class and you're going to write something down on the board 60 times. Oh. And I will sit in my chair, listen attentively, and learn. Sit in my chair, learn attentively, and learn what I've been instructed. And I had to write that across the board 60 times, erase, after 10 of them, erase it and do it another 6 complete sets. And so I was told to do that, and because they didn't know what to do. They didn't have systems in place on if you got dyslexia. They just said, well, you're a disobedient child, that kind of thing. So that was my first affirmation.
And you've gone a long way since there. All right. Who is Ludwig Boltzmann to balance out the trifecta here? And how did this set you on your path?
Boltzmann created one of the great equations in chemistry and physics. He was involved in thermodynamics, what became known as thermodynamics. And it was a kind of dealing with the movement of molecules and atoms in gases and what is randomness and what is ordered. And he put some formulas together that got put into Max Planck's formula for quantum theory. And so he was a major player. And what he wrote about something that stuck in my head. He says, even though in quantum theory we have this idea of randomness, it's not the complete explanation of the universe. There's still more that we don't know. And that led me to the idea that if there is an order and maybe there's not a completion by the randomness, maybe there's a hidden factors and hidden variables that we haven't seen. And I went on a quest to try to find that in human behavior, to help people see things in such a way they're not distressed, but they're eustressed. So they see it on the way, not in the way. So Boltzmann had an impact on my life too, just by giving me permission to not assume that was a fact, that everything was random, that there was a hidden order in things.
Which takes us right back to you not being able to read and all of these other challenges actually being not out of the way, but is the way.
On the way. Yeah, exactly. I mean, if I look back, if I made a list of all the things in my life, I mean, one of my methods today that I use dealing with grief and loss for people, I've got a method that's just amazing on that, to dissolve it and just dissolve it, not cope with it, dissolve it, the feelings of grief. And I got that from when I was living in California. I lived with a 27-year-old woman who took me in, and she played kind of a role of a girlfriend and a mom. And I started noticing that even though I'm now a street kid and I'm living kind of by myself and people are taking me in, that all the parts of my family were showing up in new forms, that nothing was missing. And I learned a principle at 14 that nothing's ever missing in life. It's just morphing and changing forms. If we're adaptable to appreciate all the forms that they morph into, we don't get trapped on the attachments of this form's good and this form's bad, which makes us lock in and think, well, we've been abandoned or we've now missed out and all of a sudden, when I realized that, and I watched throughout a whole summer all these different people playing out different parts of my family, that allowed me to realize something that the Bonpo Lama taught me when I was in Nepal. Nothing's ever missing. It's just in a form you're not honoring. And that's really profound when people sit there and go, well, I'm wishing I could have this. Everything that you're looking for is actually in your life. It's in a form you haven't acknowledged yet. You haven't seen yet. That's all.
Is that a matter of asking ourselves different questions to become
Yes.
aware of that?
Yes, exactly. So I always say, what exactly do you think you're missing? And what form is it in now? And what's the advantage of the form it's in now? How is it aligned with your values now? And what would be the drawback of the form you fantasize about that you keep comparing your life to that's making you upset?
Let's parse that. That is so important. What would be the drawback? Because what you're talking about is internal resistance. You're creating your situation so that you don't have that breakthrough because this is serving you somehow.
Well, that's it. What the thing is we have a fantasy. A fantasy is an assumption that something is going to have more upsides and downsides. A nightmare is an assumption that something's going to have more downsides and upsides. Mm-hmm. Life has both sides. You don't get a one-sided thing.
Yeah.
The brain's not designed for that. Brain's designed to see both sides. So if you have a fantasy about how life is supposed to be, just right now, I have people come to me with a corona and they say, well, I'm depressed. I said, depression is a comparison of your current reality to a fantasy about how you think it's to be. So what are you having a fantasy it to be? Well, I wish it was the way it used to be, or I wish it would be this way. So they're living in the past, they're living in the future, they're not actually getting grounded. So how is what's happening right now helping you get what you want in life? Well, it's not. How is it helping? You can't see how it is because you haven't looked, because you keep comparing it to the way it should be or used to be. And you keep comparing life to the fantasies out there. You don't get grounded and appreciate the magnificence of what it's offering you. And that's when you miss out on that moment of life you just missed out on because you keep comparing it.
Thank you. And that brings us early in this discussion to values, because your values are what you're bringing about. You are always in alignment with your values. So it may be that you need to take a look at your values because you might be valuing the very thing that you're fighting against right now.
Well, you may be actually manifesting things on an unconscious level in ways you don't know. I had a lady that said, my son is sitting in front of a TV all day long, and all he's doing is doing TV, and you need to have a consult with him and get him straightened out and go out and have him get a job to do this and that. And so I went over and talked to the 16-year-old, mm-hmm. the 23-year-old, probably 23-year-old. And I said, so your mom's on your case, huh? And she goes, yeah. I said, and by the way, the mom was paying for everything, so he had no motive to go make money because she was paying for everything, making him entitled and disempowered. I tell people to go take your kids off when they're 2 years old and go get them a job, I'm joking a bit. But this guy was watching TV, and I said, what are you watching? And he said this. I said, what's the most common things you watch on TV? Turned out that it was CSI, mm-hmm. forensic medicine. His love was solving problems dealing with crime, and particularly in the health field. And I said, so all the things you're watching all the time when you're watching TV, it's all about those? He goes, yeah. I said, have you ever considered doing that as a career? He says, absolutely. I said, did your mom know that? She goes, no. I said, why don't we go online and see if we can find a curriculum to move you in that direction and see if we can't get you on that path. And he's like going, that is cool, man. And so we started looking, and we found an educational pathway for him to be able to do that. And once he saw classes that allowed him to want to go in the direction he wanted to do, he was on fire. We went to his mom and said, his motive for watching TV is not an escape. His motive is because he's trying to learn what he wants to learn and do his career. She goes, you're kidding. I said, if we put this school curriculum together like this, and he was to go this path so he could become involved in forensic criminal studies, what about that? She goes, you want to do that, son? Says, that is my dream. Why do you think I watch TV doing that all day? She goes, oh my God, I can't believe I didn't see this. We put him on that path, excelled. He excelled on it. So unconsciously, he was doing that. Even though consciously he knew he wanted to do, he was unconsciously watching TV all day doing it. Because the school, he didn't see getting him there, the classes he was taking. But now we found a pathway of classes that allowed him to get what he wants. He's engaged.
How do we then be able to step back and look at our own lives to say, hey, this is the direction I want to go? Because oftentimes, we just had Don Miguel Ruiz on. Oftentimes, we're so domesticated, is his terminology, by society, by well-meaning people, that we can't even think, what is mine? What do I really want?
Well, you got to look at what you fill your space with, what you spend your time on spontaneously. Mm-hmm. What really energizes you, raises your energy level? What really do you spend your money on and want to spend your money on? What is it that you actually have ordered and organized in your mind? What is it you're really disciplined on? What are you thinking about, visualizing and affirming in your mind that's actually showing up, that's coming true, that you want? What is it you converse with other people about most? What is it that inspires you most? What is it that you have as goals that are coming true? And what is it you can't wait to learn? If you look at the common threads to those variables, it'll point you in the direction of where you're going to excel. Finding that out is one of the first steps to helping people build a momentum in their life.
Would you say we could quite literally, I'm a mind map kind of guy because I don't like writing lists, but grab a mind map, grab a piece of paper, doodle, draw, anything, but pull out the magnifying glass and start looking at your life.
Yes, looking objectively at what your life demonstrates is one of the most significant ways. That's why looking at space and looking at what you do in your time, and that's what you're doing. You're looking at objectively, like a drone watching you 24 hours a day. What's really going on? Not what you fantasize about, not what you wish about. Those are delusions. What exactly is your life demonstrating? That tells you what you value. Your life is demonstrating your values constantly.
When we start to figure out our values, and I want to challenge everybody to take this exercise and go do this. Don't just listen to the two of us talking. Go do this.
On my website, drdemartini.com, there's a value determination step-by-step 13-step process they can go do. It's free. It's private. No one will see it except you. Do it now. Do it a week from now, a month from now, in a quarter from now. And look at your real life and be honest about the answers. Don't put fluffy stuff down there. Put what's really there in the answers to these questions. And it will be eye-opening. Because if you're not filling your day with high-priority actions that deeply mean something to you, that you're inspired by, don't expect a very powerful and inspired life.
So, John, if people hear this and they go, oh, yeah, I'll go there, and they don't, what's going on?
They don't what?
If they say, I want to do that, I want to find out what my values are, but they stop.
When somebody says they want something and then they don't follow through on it, it's not really important. What I have people say when I ask them in audiences, thousands of people, I say, how many of you want to be financially independent? All the hands go up, legs even go up. I've seen knees and legs go up. I've seen people lifting their families' names up, their legs up and arms up. They all put that there, I want to be financially independent. Less than 1% do it. And the reason being is because they have a fantasy of living the lifestyles of the rich and famous and buying consumables that depreciate in value. They don't really have a value on buying boring asset accumulation over time that works for you, that makes you money. That's not what they're envisioning. They're envisioning spending money. And that's not where you're going to get wealthy. Spending it, you're going to make it by investing it. And so people confuse what financial independence is by that fantasy instead of the reality. And many people have delusions about what it is that they say they want. But your life demonstrates what you're really working towards. And I'm interested in what your life demonstrates, not your statements or fantasies about how you think it could be, would be, should be.
Thank you. So we say we want something. We've taken this. We understand what our values are, and the eureka light bulb goes off, which is huge. I no longer coach anyone where the eureka light bulb doesn't go off because that's just me like being hoovered. If somebody doesn't want to do the work, I can't make you do the work. It's not possible. But when the light goes on, how do we now? Where do they go for that first step?
The first step is determining what their values really represent. Because if you look carefully and ask them, what do you do daily, spontaneously, that nobody has to remind you to do, that you're inspired to do? They go, I don't know. Look again. Because I've been doing this thousands and thousands of people. I haven't found an individual yet, even a guy sitting on the couch, smoking pot even, that I've been able to find out what that is for each individual when I go down the rabbit hole. But if I just ask them, they're going to say, I don't know. But I go in there and go, get present, answer this question. What do you do every day, spontaneously or nearly every day, that nobody has to remind you to do? And sometimes it's not the fantasy that they're holding, and that's why they're not seeing it, because they're addicted to their fantasies. But if they look at their life, they go, ooh, but they're not honoring what it is. They're comparing it to a fantasy, and they're not honoring what really they're committed to, and they keep fantasizing this and beating themselves up. And Einstein said, if you're a cat expecting to swim like a fish, you're going to beat yourself up. You got to honor you're a cat. You need to find out what that is. Either shift the values to change the trajectory or honor what the path is.
Thank you, thank you. And that leads me to 2020, 2021, which is, I think we could get away. This is my maybe limiting belief. We could get away in the past with not honoring that we're a cat and not a fish. But we've just all gotten the cosmic 2x4. And so now is the time to go, whoa, this is a changing world. Vibrations changing, energy is changing, situations changing. I must be the best cat that I can be right now, or it's going to hurt and hurt badly.
Well, when you got two ways of mastering your life.
Yes.
You can find out what your values are, and you can start prioritizing your actions and fill your day with the highest priority actions possible and delegate all lower priority things. Or you can take whatever your responsibilities are in your current position and ask, how is doing this temporarily until I can delegate it helping me fulfill what's meaningful to me? Taking command of your perceptions, taking command of your actions, and making a decision which one at this moment is the wisest, and moving them towards what's truly highest in priority gives you liberty. Because when you're in your highest value, you're more in your executive center, and you get more inspired vision, more strategic planning, more action orientation, more spontaneity, and more self-governance. And you have on the path of mastery instead of the path of victim of history.
That's exactly what I was going to say, is what you're describing to me as when people get stuck, when they're not having these breakthrough experiences, they're on the path of victimhood. Poor me, woe is me, I'm stuck with this, I can't get ahead.
Yeah, this last weekend when I was teaching the breakthrough experience in London and also in Istanbul, I found this guy there, this probably about 58, 57 maybe. And he was running a story about his childhood, about how his mommy didn't do this when he was young. And I said, I started to go, I started playing with him. I said, this is such a bullshit story. Excuse my expression, but it's just BS. I said, stop the story and let's ask the question. How, by your mother being exactly the way she was, how did it help you in your life? I don't know. I can't see it. I didn't ask that. I said, how did it help you? And I made him answer that 19 times until he broke down in tears. For the first time in his life, he appreciated his mother. He never took the time to look. He's been going to little therapists. The therapist said, well, you had a dysfunctional mama, and that's why you're screwed up. Bull. You're not screwed up. You just haven't asked the right question in life. And the second you do and you're grateful, that's no longer baggage. Now you can say thank you to your mom and get forward in your life. Otherwise, you're going to be protecting yourself from getting married and marrying a mom. And you're basically going to use that as your excuse because you're basically disempowered because you've been overprotected by people supporting the fantasy that you're a victim. So he broke through. He got 19 benefits. He broke down in tears. He wrote a letter of thanks to his mom, even though she's passed away now, just for his own consciousness. And I said, now, let's get on with now what's really priority and quit coming up with excuses. Let's move on now. So it's really a breakthrough for him this weekend.
Awesome. So he's broken through. He's on the other side. He sees that these things have helped him. He sees that his mom has helped him.
Yeah.
Now, where does he go? What is the next step that he gets to take? Actually, even before that, his brain is lighting up now because he's going to be able to appreciate his highest value, isn't he?
Once you see how whatever you've experienced is on the way and linked to your highest values, your executive center comes online. The second you're in priority in your highest values, blood glucose and oxygen goes into the forebrain, and inspired vision, strategic planning, executing plans, self-governance, they automatically emerge in the brain the second you see things on the way, not in the way. That's why one of the greatest questions you can ask in life, what is the highest priority action I can be doing right now with the resources I have today to be able to serve the greatest number of people in the most efficient way? And how is whatever has happened to me in this moment or in the past, how is it helping me fulfill whatever is most meaningful to me? And don't say, I don't know. Find the answer and watch what happens.
Please forgive me. Can I have you repeat that more slowly? Because if you don't get anything else here today, this is it.
Every day, ask yourself, what is the highest priority action I can do today that will allow me to serve the greatest number of people possible with the resources that I perceive I have in this moment in the most effective and efficient manner? And how, no matter what's happening in my life, in my perception, how are those experiences and perceptions helping me fulfill what that is that I want to create? How is it helping? How is it on the way? How is it helping fulfilling what's most deeply meaningful and purposeful and priority to me? If you answer those questions, be accountable, and don't say, I don't know, I can't find it as a victim, you will automatically build momentum towards achievement, and you will not see things in the way. You'll see things on the way because you've made a link in your brain, in your associative area of your cortex, to the perception to the mission. Once you transform your perceptions to on the mission, there's nothing in your way because you now know how to take whatever comes along and put it on the way.
Thank you. Thank you. So we have somebody, maybe they're working long hours, maybe they're working long hours online, or maybe they are addicted right now to watching the latest conspiracy news, this, that, the other. They have a clue of what's the highest value, but they do not have the structure, the routine, the system. They've never been taught, how do I actually step forward?
Yes. The thing is prioritization. Anyone who hasn't mastered prioritization is going to not experience life in its fullest. Prioritization is one of the most significant things we can learn. What is the highest priority thing we can be thinking? What's the highest priority thing we can say? What's the highest priority thing we can be internally dialoguing? What's the highest priority action we can do? What's the highest priority use of my money today? If we don't prioritize things based on what's really valuable to us, we're automatically setting ourselves up for mediocrity.
So would you have people take the time, take a weekend, take an hour a morning where they start to have regularity of being with themselves? I'm not talking meditation. I've been on the cushion for hours where I'm not getting answers because I'm not prioritizing it.
All you need is a minute to ask that question. What is the highest priority? I learned this from Mary Kay, from Mary Kay Cosmetics 36 years ago.
Yeah.
I asked her, what advice could you give a young man who wants to travel the world and inspire millions of people around the world? She said, every day, write down the highest priority actions you can do today that will help you fulfill your dreams. That's simple. So I got index cards out, little 3x5 index cards.
Yeah.
And I sat a minute, thought about what I was grateful for, because I found I was most authentic if I was grateful. And then asked, what is the highest priority action I can be doing right now to help me fulfill what is most deeply meaningful to me? And I wrote it down. Research, write, communicate, whatever it was. And I kept records of that day after day after day after day. What was the highest priority things? And then I looked at what was the highest priority of the highest priorities over time. And it boiled down to 4 things: research, write, travel, teach. I've delegated everything else off my plate. I don't do anything else. I research every day. I write every day. I travel on Zoom now, although normally I'm flying, and I teach every day. I learned that anytime you do lower priority things, you devalue yourself. And anytime you do higher priority things, you value yourself. And if you value you, so will the world. But if you don't value, don't expect the world to.
Thank you. Let's double back then to what you said earlier, because there are 2 ways that we can view things. We can either delegate or we can shift how we're viewing them right now. I love a line from Lisa Nichols, also in The Secret, which is, your job is your investor. How do we make that slight but massive tweak in our minds to get the executive function going when we're saying, I'm not doing what I love right now, and then we go down?
Well, if you're not doing what you love right now, it's because you haven't structured the path of doing what you love in a way that serves people, that you remunerate yourself with. If you don't package yourself in a way that you're actually in fair exchange doing something deeply meaningful that serves people, that earns an income, you're not going to be able to delegate. So you have a responsibility to care enough about humanity to find out what the needs are, find one of the problems out there that inspires you to solve, and get off your buff and get out there and solve a problem where you get compensated magnificently for serving people, and then delegate with the money you make, delegate the rest so you're free to do what you love, making a difference in the world. That's the path.
Woohoo! I call it the law of reciprocity. It's the hardest to teach somebody who is, quote, spiritual, that, dang it, you better ask for what you're worth or you aren't getting what you value.
Well, many people confuse spirituality with this kind of fluffy stuff instead of actually a grounded idea of serving people. Can I share a funny story?
Please, love it.
I had this lady come to me. She was sort of she meditated, she chanted, she burned incense, real mystical, kind of a, flower child from the 60s kind of thing. And she said, what do you do when you've got a husband that's a materialist and you're a spiritualist? Even though the spiritualist means talking to the dead, but she didn't understand that. But she meant somebody dedicated to spirituality.
Yes.
And I said, well, there is no such thing. She goes, what do you mean there's no such thing? I said, there's no such thing. Every human being is spiritual. Whatever they're doing is part of a spiritual path. And she goes, well, I don't understand that. I said, what does your husband do? She says, well, he runs an IT company, computer company. How many employees do you have? 200. And what do you work? He goes, no. I said, so you're meditating and doing yoga and chanting and burning incense and contemplating your navel and reading spiritual books all day? And she goes, yep. I said, and you believe that that's more spiritual than a man that's actually giving job opportunities to 200 people, serving millions of people across the world, helping the economy, helping build taxations and helping pay the whole system work? That's less spiritual? Are you sure that he just doesn't have a different form of spiritual expression, and the one that allows you to sit on your butt because otherwise you'd be off having to work? He's paying for that. And then she goes, you got a point there. I said, you're not less spiritual or more spiritual. He's not less spiritual or more spiritual. You have different forms of spiritual expression. What inspires you is meditating. What inspires him is going to work and serving and filling needs across people around the world. Neither of you are materialist any more than spiritualist. You're both dedicated to both those functions in your own hierarchy of values and expressions. And she kind of goes, good point. She says, I've been thinking I'm more spiritual. He's just a different form of spirituality. And we go around and compare people to certain forms of spirituality or certain forms of something. And we have a dysmorphia because we're comparing ourselves to people we put above us or comparing ourselves to people we put below us instead of actually realizing that we're all reflections of each other.
Thank you. Thank you. How do we move past? We get an idea of a value. Actually, it has to do with the husband, the wife and the husband, which is there's a limiting belief in there. How do we move past, or what are the questions we get to ask ourselves to allow ourselves to move past the limiting belief? Because a light went on in you. And you said, I'm going to figure it out. Over, under, through, beneath, it doesn't matter. I'm going to figure this out. Most people say, oh, well, I can't do that because.
Well, the limited beliefs are nothing more than injected values of people you put on authority. The moment you compare yourself to others and are too humble to admit what you see in them is inside you and disown parts, you'll give them power. You'll take in their values. You'll attempt as a cat to swim like a fish in their value system. You'll then to beat yourself up thinking there's something missing. You'll brain offload your decisions and give it to them and other people. And you won't think independently of your own, and you'll fall prey to the conventions and traditions of mediocrity.
There's a value here that seems out of alignment that I'm playing with in my head. Seeking happiness. Oh, I just want to be happy.
Those are the saddest people I've ever met. I gave up happiness. It made me too sad as a booklet I started to put together. I hadn't finished it. The Joy of Depression. The ancient Stoics knew that that's a foolish path. Aristotle warned against that, the hedonistic pursuit of one-sidedness.
Yeah.
Life has both sides. If I went up to you and I said, look, Michael, you're always positive, you're never negative, always kind, never cruel, always nice, never mean, always giving, never taking, always up, never down, always peaceful, never wrathful, always positive, never negative. Your BS meter would go off and you go, I can think of some times I was just the opposite of that. But
I'm thinking there's an axe murderer buried deep inside, waiting to come out.
Yeah, axe murderer in there. Has to be to balance it. There's never a saint without a sinner, as they call it, or a virtue without a vice, or a hero without a villain. And if I went to you and I said, well, you're always mean, you're never nice, you're always cruel, you're never kind, you're always negative, never positive, always wrathful, never peaceful, always stingy, never generous, your BS meter would go off again, and you go, no, I have times when I'm nice and generous and stuff. But if I went to you and I said, sometimes you're nice, sometimes you're mean, sometimes you're kind, sometimes you're cruel, sometimes you're positive, sometimes you're negative, sometimes you're peaceful, sometimes you're wrathful, you'd go, yep. And when you can finally embrace both sides of your life and not try to get rid of half of your life and fantasize about being only one-sided, you liberated yourself from the bondage of a moral imperative and a moral hypocrisy that nobody can ever achieve.
Which means that the more that you would try to find happiness, the more miserable you're going to be.
The more miserable you are because you're now looking for happiness on a one-sided world, which in Buddhism, they said, The Buddhist claimed to have said, I don't know what he said. I wasn't around when he was saying it, but who knows what he really said. But the point is, the desire for that which is unobtainable. Imagine we have a magnet here, a positive pole, negative pole, and this is the desirable pole, the positive pole, and this is the pole you want to get rid of. Imagine if you try to do that. The desire for that which is unobtainable, because you can't get a positive pole without the negative pole, and the desire to avoid that which is unavoidable, you can't get rid of the negative pole, is a source of human suffering. The reality is you're going to have both poles. So you might as well embrace both sides of life. In fact, it's been shown that we grow most effectively at the border of those two poles. We need both support and challenge. We need pairs of opposites. That's why life has it. That's why we have prey and predator in a food chain to maximize life expression. We need both sides in life. We're not here for a one-sided life. The pursuit of a monopole is a source of the bipolar condition.
Wow. I hadn't heard it that way. I had not heard it that way, but that makes perfect sense, particularly because as you try to crank things up to one side, it's got to swing back to the other side to balance the equation.
The more you're addicted to one, the more the other one hurts. The more you think this is pleasure, then that's pain. When you infatuate with a trait in somebody, its opposite is painful, and it comes with it. You don't get one-sided people. So when the second it's there, you think, oh, I feel betrayed now because you're supposed to be one-sided. No, you're not going to be one-sided. Nobody's going to be one-sided.
So then talk to us then, before we wind things down here. We're talking about breakthroughs, and we want to talk about fear, because fear can actually be a good thing, but it seems on the surface that it's the very thing that's holding us back.
The magnificence of fear is it's letting you know when you're pursuing an unrealistic expectation, fantasy, and delusion. That's what it's about. Because when you have a fear, it means you're going after a fantasy, assuming there's going to be a positive without a negative, and then your intuition is bringing up the phobia to point out the downsides that you're unwilling to see. That's the necessary component of your mind. Fear is your friend. It's also pursuing something that's not highest on your value, and you're not really doing your due diligence of planning things and mitigating the risk. That's why the Stoics always said, meditate on the evils and think of all the obstacles and be prepared for them. You don't make it to Mars. You don't make it to the space station. You don't make it to the moon thinking only the positives and not thinking of what can go wrong and how to prepare for it. You prepare for both sides. And the person that's prepared with both sides, the person who embraces both sides, is the one who's prepared for life, most resilient, adaptable. Their heart rate variability is expanded, and they're most able to handle life's perturbations and vicissitudes of perception.
Wow, that was quite the statement. I love that. Going from there, well, we're going to stay on the same topic here, but I had a professor many, many years ago, and he was actually, what was he? He was in between state departments as they changed from one president to the next, deputy department, director of defense, something like that. And he talked about, MAD, mutually assured destruction. It was a class on nuclear arms control. And there was an expression that really stuck me to this day. Trust but verify.
Yes.
Which means you want to go on plan A, awesome. Have your plan B no matter what. It doesn't mean you're negative.
Well, but let's look. MAD is set up on a John Nash equilibrium theory. If you study John Nash, he's the one in The Beautiful Mind. Mm-hmm. Russell Crowe?
Yes.
And in there, he created a model.
And MAD is, for those who don't know, mutually assured destruction.
Yes. When we're looking at reconnaissance and laser beams and satellites up there and cyber, terrorisms and things like that, all that's in the cloud today. All that's up there in the satellite world out there. And that's real. Right now, they got lasers right now. They could, wipe out parts of a city if they wanted to. So they have to have a MAD, which is a John Nash equilibrium, to make sure that there's no probability of somebody taking a risk of doing some nuclear launch without the consequences being just as dire for them.
Yeah.
To keep things in equilibrium, to make sure they don't do that. So those equilibriums of the positives, negatives are built into the equation to make sure that we have an ordered world. So you must have those things in balance. It doesn't matter. You can't get a polarization without having a consequence.
Which means, I almost want to say, be careful what you wish for. Just make sure that you bring things into balance.
Well, your intuition is constantly trying to do it. And if you don't get it from within, your physiology will create symptoms to try to bring you back to it. Your psychology will bring its intuition to try to bring you back to it. Your sociology will bring you experiences in your social world that will bring you back to it. If you get cocky and manic and proud, you get humbled in criticism. Like, I think Donald has been a good example of that.
Yep.
or your theological tragedies in your life will humble you. Nature has a way with its wisdom to level the playing field of consciousness.
Thank you. Can you tell us what is state of unconditional love, SOUL?
You just said it. It's the state of unconditional. It's the state where you're not attracted or repelled, but you're poised and present and purposeful, empowered, prioritized, and in a sense, purposeful in your experience. It's a state where there's no seeking or avoiding. There's no impulse. There's no instinct. There's just awe. There's grace. There's thank you. I see the order. I'm in tears. That's the state. That's the most equanimous, the most objective, the most authentic state we have.
Woohoo! We're coming into a new year. A lot of people are going to hear it for the new year. This actually comes out just a few days. I think it will be 2 days, 2.5 days before the new year. People hear this. If they were to take one step forward toward their goals in the new year, where did they begin?
Don't waste your time on low priority goals that are impulsive, that are compensating for a temporary overspending or a temporary overeating. Look at what your highest values really truly are and set goals that are deeply meaningful, that you already have evidence that you're committed to, and start building up a strategy to go build momentum on the achievement of that. Stick to what's really important to you. Quit setting goals that are other people's goals. Stick to the ones that are truly yours.
Do you think that's why so many people show up at the gym on January 1st or 2nd and then they've gone poof by the end of the month?
There's no point. I don't even do resolutions. Every year I get asked on radio, television, newspaper, magazines on how do you get New Year's resolutions. Don't waste your time on New Year's resolutions. They're a waste of time because most of them are compensations for temporary perturbations during the holidays of overeating, overspending it, or not doing what you really want to do and pleasing everybody else. They're just compensations. Look at what your life demonstrates is truly meaningful, truly inspiring, that you have a track record to do, and get focused on what's really priority for you. And then you won't let yourself down because that's where you're going to excel. Stick to real goals that have real meaning, that you have evidence of working towards, that you don't have a desire to stop. You have a desire to continue.
Thank you. Just a few last questions. First off, where can people go to find your breakthrough experience and to find out more?
Well, if they want to know about me, all they got to do is go to my website, drdemartini.com. And please go to the value determination process. It's free. It's private. It's something you can do on your own. It takes about 30 minutes. It's an eye-opener. Just do it. Just do it for yourself. And I promise it'll be worth your time. But answer the questions that it asks honestly and objectively. If they do that, and they can go on my website, it's an educational website. You can spend the rest of your life. You'd have to believe in some sort of reincarnation just to be able to see my website, because it's going to take you more than one life to go through it. It's filled with information on educating people on how to master their life.
I love it. And you just brought up such a key word as we're beginning to, we're rapidly winding things down. Honest. It is so critically important that nobody else has to see this. You have to be completely honest. This is one of the hardest things to do. Be honest with what you want.
Yes, because if you're sitting down and setting up a fantasy for yourself, your life will become a nightmare. But if you set up a true objective, you'll become a master.
Woohoo! 2 last questions. Importance of a routine.
Well, if you're doing something that's highest on your value, the greatest routine is to stick to highest priorities every day and make that your habit. Make that your routine. I delegate everything else, so I don't have anything else to do except what I love doing. That's the routine you want to make. And people say, well, how can you do that? I guarantee you it's able to be done. When I started out on this journey, I was living on the streets. I didn't have any money. I was panhandling. I did everything like that. All I did is learn the principles that stand the test of time, stood on some shoulders of some masters, and applied the principles that were obviously the ones that worked. And I've been blessed today. And it's only because I prioritized, I got clear about what was really important, and I made sure I did something of service to, I was compensated for it, so I had the money to delegate the rest of it. And I've given job opportunities and inspired lots of people to do what they love to do by me doing what I love doing.
Woohoo! Any last words of wisdom you want to share? And you may have just done that, John. Any last words of wisdom you want to share with people?
The only thing is whoever's out there, just know the magnificence of the true you, the authentic you, the individual you truly are, is far greater than any fantasies that will come into your mind because of comparing yourself to others. So give yourself permission to shine, not shrink, and do something extraordinary, not ordinary, by just discovering the true you, discover what's really, really important to you and stick to it. Watch what happens. Piggy banks become biggie banks. Little actions make big dreams if you build momentum in the direction of what's authentic.
Thank you, John. And I'm stepping back. I've got my aperture back here at the moment, and I'm watching you playing with the words, and I'm thinking of you at 18 years old, going through the dictionary and learning 30 words a day, and how you have become such a powerful wordsmith because every rhyme or lyric that you have here has meaning behind it and also has a little boy in it who had to wear a dunce cap.
That's exactly what it is. Thank God for my first grade teacher. I never got to thank her because she passed away way beforehand. She was up in age when I met her. But if she was alive today, I've said it in my mind. And you know what's interesting? When I had the first grade teacher, I also had another teacher that had the opposite view of me, who was a first grade teacher and thought I would go far. When she was 93, she contacted me and asked me what I had been doing. She wanted to know what I did after all these years because she believed I was going to do something with my life. I had complete opposite views of me. One, I was a dunce and never be able to do it, which was evident of it. And the other one said, no, he's got a creative, special part of him that's different. And I just believe he's going to go someplace. She followed me and contacted my office in Houston at 93 to find out what I was doing and what I'd done with my life.
Woohoo! It's the two wolves. Which one are we going to feed? Which side of that magnet?
Nature always has a pair of opposites. When you can embrace both sides of the world around you and the world inside you, you can embrace your whole.
Thank you, thank you, thank you, John. So for everyone out there, this is Michael Sandler saying, be well, have fun, get the breakthrough experience, and begin discovering breakthroughs in your life today, and shine bright. Woohoo! Wow, what a special interview with Dr. John Demartini talking about getting in alignment with our values. On that note, if you want to find out how to tap into your intuition, your higher self, and turn your journaling into channeling, check out the Automatic Writing Experience, our book, now available on Amazon. You can also check it out at automaticwriting.com. If there's one tool I teach all of my clients in order to step ahead, in order to get alignment with their values, it's automatic writing, where you can literally go quiet, put pen to paper, and in a meditative state, the answers spill out before you. Again, you can get it on Amazon. You can find out more at automaticwriting.com. If you like this, be sure to subscribe and click the bell icon so you're notified of upcoming shows, YouTube premieres, live events every Sunday night with me. Big thumbs up if you like this. Leave your comments below. Of course, click right here to find out more great shows to help you to change your life. Love you guys so much. Shine bright. Woohoo!